Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Sense Podcast here on Samaritan's Well. And we have a very special guest today. She's actually really close to our office here in Richardson. She's got her own practice. Her name is Caroline Watson Kobylinski, and she is a licensed professional counselor supervisor. She's a trauma specialist certified in EMDR and ART. And we are so glad to have you, Caroline.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to really talk about your specialty, trauma. And I know one of the things we talked about was just two huge areas in your work, and that's attachment and attachment theory and how that fits with trauma response and trauma recovery and healing from trauma. And then just the biology and physiology of trauma. But we'd love to hear what drew you in to working with trauma and trauma therapy, Caroline.
Yeah, so kind of a convoluted story. So I started out in therapy on the other side of the room.
Okay.
I grew up in church and was always a good kid, and something happened between my freshman and sophomore year that was really traumatizing and really derailed me and my faith for the next decade.
Okay. Okay.
So I got a therapist that I started seeing in high school,
Hmm.
and that I started seeing in high school, um, and she completely violated my trust.
Oh
She
no.
just told all of my parents, just parroted back all that I was telling her, and so then I didn't have a lot of use for therapists after that for a long time.
I'll bet you didn't.
Um, so it was during that time though that I had, not an audible voice conversation with God, but just really, if this is what you do to the people that love you, then I just don't want any part of that.
Oh
And
wow.
so through my high school years, so I have bipolar 2 disorder. I've had that my whole life. And my childhood was full of emotional dysregulation and just big feelings that I didn't know what to do with, and my parents didn't know what to do with. And so in high school, that culminated in me self medicating with substances. And so, summer after my senior year, I got a DWI, and my parents were like, okay, we are done. Something has got to change here. And so I went to treatment and was there for 7.5 months. It Looking back on it, God totally redeemed that time. It just is still, um, it was a messy time. But I have found with my clients that having been through treatment, um, is able to create some common ground for clients that have also been through treatment, that they know that I understand kind of the ins and outs and the trauma that really is going to treatment in general. Um, so it was in my kind of early mid 20s that I really started intentionally working in therapy on my relationship with God. The church that I grew up in was really, really legalistic, and that left some big scars. And so that's actually led me, to part of my practice today is working with church hurts. Um, because it's like that's such an easy place for Satan. I've turned into my mother and I talk
Yep.
about Satan these days.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but that's such an easy place for Satan to get a foothold
It
because
is.
people look to the church to be perfect, and
Hmm.
it's not perfect. It's
No.
a bunch of people that are trying to get better, and things get missed, and that can just end up really poorly. And
Hmm.
so it did for me. And but during my early mid 20s, I really started to kind of reckon with all of that and come back to my faith and figure out what did that look like what biblically lines up and what does that look like for me. So I went on a mission trip. My family is big into mission work, and so I went on a mission trip in my mid 20s, and we went to a Catholic mass. And it was there that I really was overwhelmed with this idea of the universal church. It just really, the church that I grew up in was really isolated. And so to think of that there was a whole group of people praying the
Yes.
same prayers and the same songs and all of that every week, that felt really, really interesting to me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I became a Catholic for a couple of
Hmm.
years. Not
Hmm.
a Catholic anymore.
Okay.
Um, the church that I was plugged into was, this because you were in the same region, was about
Mhm.
20 minutes away in Coppell. And
Okay.
so getting plugged in there was hard because all of those people lived there and I lived in uptown Dallas. And so that
Sure.
was like a 40-minute
Oh, sure.
ordeal. Um, so I ended up back in kind of Bible church. The church that we go to now is Baptist. I didn't know
Okay.
that it was Baptist
Ah,
for a long time.
right.
Um, we are not part of the Southern Baptist Convention because women do preach at our church, which I
Okay.
really like.
Okay.
And, it's taken me a long time. It's not until we found this church that I really have been able to trust church leadership again. That's just been something that has followed me kind of through the years that as I've worked on my faith, and this is just kind of counseling in general, especially trauma, as we go through life and gain maturity and experience, we see these other parts that our trauma has affected. And so I'd do a little bit of work and get to a healthy place and then kind of, I would mature some more and do a little more work. And so um, that has kind of gotten me to where I am kind of spiritually. And so
That's quite a journey.
it is. And my life has really been dictated by Romans 8:28 of God
Okay.
works everything together for the good of those called according to his purpose. And I can look back through my life and just see God's handwriting on the wall over and over and over again. And my clients that are believers, that's something that's kind of a regular thing that I have them do is I want you to look back and see God's handwriting and let's talk about it next time.
I
Uh,
love that, Caroline. And just for a second, I the Romans 8:28 has been such an important verse for me too. And over the years, I've come to the conclusion that that phrase, all things work together for good to those who love God, is perhaps better phrased by saying all things work together for good for those who overcome their offense towards God. You spent
oh, I
years
love that.
working on overcoming that offense towards God because
Yeah,
you blamed things of the church like the legalism on God, which is what is really common for us to do. And so I'm hearing this beautiful story that gradually you were able to let down and let go of that offense toward God. I call it thoughts against God,
yeah.
TAG. But you were able to recognize it and eventually, and I'm sure you had some help along the way for
Oh, for
sure,
sure. Yeah,
right? But to be able to release those thoughts against God. But isn't it true? It's so much like our counseling. You have to recognize it before you can do anything about it.
absolutely. 100%. I do a lot of Enneagram work, and I approach that through the Christian lens. And it talks about I'm going to sneeze. We talk about in Enneagram stuff getting to our full self and getting to that the essence of who God created us to be. And when that's our constant work as we are getting back to who we were before we became damaged in the world. Even if we, experience not some huge trauma, but just, kind of bumps and bruises along the way, our personalities start to be the way that we get our needs met. And
Yes.
so, in thinking through that lens and coming back to, letting go of the prejudice and really seeing other people as they're trying to find the essence of who they are too. I think that it creates, like you touched on, it creates a lot of grace for people and a lot of grace for ourselves.
I think that's beautifully said. I so like the way you said that, Caroline. And, you know, like you said, to me, our job as believers, and I work mostly with believers that come in here, is like you said, to say, okay, who did God create you to be? What are the wounds or the things that are hindering that today? And if we can get you some freedom from those things that hindering, the real you can blossom.
Yes, absolutely. And I love what you said about being able to pinpoint those things. One thing that we talk about in Enneagram is that change is not sustainable. Transformation comes through allowing things to fall away, generally outside of our control. And to be able to kind of non-judgmentally observe ourselves up here of just noticing, we can't change the pattern if we don't know the pattern. And
Yes,
so if we are, that non-judgmental observation, I think is the starting point of that, because if we are caught in the shame and blame of our poor behavior, it makes, shame says that I'm a bad person, whereas guilt says I've done a bad thing. And shame
so
is
true.
condemning, whereas guilt can be transformative and repentance. And
Yes,
um, so thinking of it through that lens of we got to figure out, the playbook before we can adjust the players.
that's so good, Caroline. And I had a young man, maybe 30ish, in my office the other day, and he came in saying, "Please help me with this stronghold I keep going back to." And it came to me that day, and I'll call him John, like John Doe. I said, "John, you have to hate the sin, but not hate yourself.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get better as long as you hate yourself. You're condemning yourself. But it's good to hate the sin. It's good to allow conviction to work and say, oh, I hate that thing that is so limiting for me, that is creating all these negative things for me, or, that's
Absolutely.
blocking me, but not hating yourself."
Yes, I think that's a really important um, differentiation to make
So
and to help our clients
would
make.
you like to talk about attachment some right now, or would you like to go into the biology and physiology of trauma? Because both of those are so fascinating.
Yes, and it's kind of chicken and egg with those things. So I am an attachment therapist. I view everything through an attachment lens. Um, I am a family systems therapist. And so, whether I'm working with the whole family or a couple or just the individual, I am always looking for how does this fit into the constellation, that the system that they are in. And so, figuring out, is the system wholly healthy or is it dysfunctional? And because we can't get rid of our families, like
No.
they might be awful, but your family is your family. And I mean, obviously, there are times to completely sever ties. Um, but we don't always know. Sorry, sorry, we don't know what is going to happen based on our circumstances. And after the thing happened, when I was in high school, my dad and I were talking about it, and he said, Caroline, we live in a ripple effect world, that we don't know what this hardship here is going to do, down the line for someone else. And so, um, approaching from a family systems and then approaching from a family systems, and then also from an attachment standpoint, because our attachment is where we figure out kind of how do we fit into the system. Kiddos are so egocentric that and this is the way God made them, but again, this can get hijacked by Satan, that if the system is broken, kids are so egocentric that they're not able to see the system is broken. They think I must be broken.
I must be broken.
Yeah. And so that's where attachment really comes in. And this is kind of the biology that plays into attachment as well. Our attachment is pretty much, we have figured out if the world is safe by about 2 or 2.5.
Yep.
Um, we have these things at the back of our brains called pawns. And that is where we start to, from the get go, start to figure out if the world is safe or not. So as babies, they start to put together, when they cry, there's this shadow that comes over and it soothes them. So it just, and there's a voice and there's all of these things that when the baby is distressed, there's this shadow that comes over and helps. And so from birth, babies are feeling out, is the world safe or not? And
Yes.
again, I mean, that is just so wild to me, the intricacies of our brains that God created. I mean, that's totally nuts to me.
Yes.
And, you know,
Yes.
as I learn more about the scientific part of this stuff, I'm just blown away at God's creativity and just ability for each system we have, each cell, each nerve, each everything serves a purpose.
It's
And that is
amazing.
just wild to me.
And so tell us a little about what happens with attachment, biology, physiology, if that shadow's not there. Those first 2 or 2.5 years, there's a lot of neglect, or there's yelling or screaming or fighting. And obviously, that young child is concluding subconsciously unsafe.
So, in attachment, so secure attachment says, I'm okay, you're okay. And anxious attachment says, I'm not okay, but you're okay. And avoidant attachment says, I'm okay, you're not okay. And disorganized attachment says, nobody's okay, and I can't, like, I don't care, and I don't care if you care. Like,
Right.
this
Right.
is not even a
Mhm.
thing for me.
Right.
Um, and so learning those different attachment styles, and what they have figured out through research is that even if it is not the biological caregiver during those times giving the care, that attachment can still be secure. And so it really is about the consistency of what all of that looks like. And obviously, there are exceptions to that. I started my career working in substance use and dual diagnosis,
Okay.
and I came to specialize in reactive attachment disorder young men. And so reactive attachment is where it's the push pull of, I hate you, don't leave me. It's just that attachment wound is so deep that it's almost, without the Holy Spirit really healing it, it's not a great situation.
Yeah.
And so, um,
We might get borderline personality disorder out of
yes,
that RAD, right? I hate
yes,
you, don't leave me. Yeah.
yes.
Where you
And
desperately need intimacy, but you're terrified of the process, and you get
yes,
scared away over and over and over.
yes. And so that's actually what RAD is diagnosed later in life. It's that um, BPD, place, and narcissism
Right,
are the
right.
two big, and some bipolar traits in there too. Those are because reactive attachment is a small child adolescent diagnosis. And so as adults, that's the more mature, the things that you can be diagnosed with over the age of 18.
Mhm, mhm,
That's where that starts.
mhm, mhm.
Um, so coming back to attachment, the other thing is we have different attachment styles with different things. And so we may have, you know, a relationship over here that is safe and it is secure. And so there can be this moment, in a secure attachment, there's autonomy. It's, two people can be apart from each other and the connection is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because we have dysfunctional attachment in this one place doesn't mean that we have to have it everywhere. And one thing that I find with my clients is a lot of times within the therapeutic relationship, and I'm sure you know this, you can start to create and model what a secure attachment looks like. And have that be the thing that helps clients start to feel safe enough to really put themselves into the world. And the other thing about trauma and attachment is resiliency. I always say, if I could figure out how you bottle resiliency, I would never have to work a day in my life.
Right.
And so resiliency, some people are born with it and some people are not. It's something that we don't really understand. It's the same reason that someone could grow up in a 2-parent home and still, kind of wind up really struggling in adult life. I mean, I grew up in a Christian home with 2 wonderful parents. After we've kind of worked through some stuff, my family, we're together every single weekend.
Oh, that's
We
wonderful.
are very, very close. Yeah, we all live within like a mile and a half of each other. So we're in each other's grill like all the time. But, and then I really struggled because of my bipolar 2 stuff. And, I experienced some really tragic things that went on in high school. And it was really fracturing for my relationship with my parents. And even in my 20s, I ended up into emotionally and verbally abusive relationships. And like, where did that come from? Like I have great relationships with my brother. I have a great relationship with my dad. My dad has always hung the moon to me. And so you know, it just, we don't understand
Can be
exactly how
baffling
all
at
that
times,
works.
can it?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. And I think that's the thing as therapists that sometimes is really hard is, we're racking our brain. The girl that's my mentor, I used to love a diagnosis. And she would
Right.
be like, Caroline, you love to put things in boxes and put a bow on them and be like, okay, now this is what we're going to do. Um, and really, a diagnosis is just a framework to, okay, this is historically what we know helps with this.
Right.
And let's figure out what this looks like for you. And I think as therapists, it can be really hard when we're trying and we don't understand exactly how to help our clients. It kind
Mm-hmm.
of autopsying, is this attachment? Is this
Mm-hmm.
trauma response? Is it both of them?
Mm-hmm.
What does this all look like on the global level?
That's good.
And so, if we bring the trauma component into it, like we were talking about, I love the science behind psychology. And that is something that has been majorly embraced in the last probably decade when Bessel van der Kolk came out with The Body Keeps the Score. I
Right.
mean, that was life changing for the way that we interact with our clients, our patients,
Yes.
and their trauma. And so it used to be, with psychoanalysis, people would go to therapy for hours, 5 days a week, and they would just talk through all of this stuff. And so they thought, if we can solve it up here, the rest of this is going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what we have learned with science and psychology together is trauma is really a bottom up ordeal. And so with EMDR and ART, both of those things are about the information that is stored in our bodies, not just the way it's stored in our brains. So the biology behind trauma is, so pictures are stored in the right side of our brain and words are stored in the left. And so when there is trauma, that gets fractured. And so because our amygdala or our reptilian brain, that's the oldest part of our brain, that's the part of our brain that kept cavemen alive, of like, hey, I have to pay attention because there's a saber-toothed tiger that might eat me. So it's a really important part of our brain. And as humans have developed, our brain has kind of changed a little bit. But that amygdala is what is our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And so when we get into a situation, that's the part of our brain that goes, okay, this is not safe. We need a solution. And when that happens, our frontal lobe goes offline. And our frontal lobe is the part of our brain that's kind of the most newly developed and growing part of our brain. For men, it's not, they used to think it was 25 that it was fully grown, and now it's further out than
Yeah,
that.
it's further than that. It's closer to 30, really, right?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
learn more and more. It's fully developed maybe by 30, Which,
Yeah.
by the way, I have an interesting anecdote on that. I'll have to see
Yeah.
what you think about my theory. My theory, now that we're looking at the science, is around 30, we're pretty confident your brain of a male is fully developed. I think Jesus woke up one day and Father God goes, okay, son, you're 30. Your brain is fully developed. Let's get this
Yes.
going.
Yes. I'm in total agreement with that. In total
That's
agreement with
my
that.
pet theory, right? It's
Yeah.
like
I
now
love
that
it.
you got your full brain, let's get going.
Yeah. No, I love that. I
But
think that
go
that
on with
is,
what you're sharing because it's so powerful with the amygdala firing and with trauma responses, and especially with some of these different attachment issues, it can tend to fire so much that we
yes.
can't get into that other part of
Right.
our brain.
Yeah. So our frontal lobe is where that's the computer of our brain. That's
Uh-huh.
what responds to options. It's creative, it's collaborative. That's where, when we're really grooving, our frontal lobe is online and firing well. And so when there is a traumatic experience, that all that blood shunts off to the back of your brain because that's where your safety is found. And so at night, and this is so interesting to me, this meme popped up on my Instagram, I think, the other day. Um, that, we people say all the time, go to bed, you'll feel better about it in the morning.
Yeah.
And biblically, we say God's mercies are new every morning. And literally during the night, your hippocampus, which is over here, is healing your brain. It is storing memories. It's finding what's helpful, what's not helpful, what is short term memory, what is long term memory. And so when there is trauma, that is not stored the same as other memories. And so if you think about it kind of like a library, those books don't go where they're supposed to. Um, and so all of that kind of works together. And because our amygdala is the protection of us, things get stored in a way that if we experience them again, we're going to be safe.
Yeah.
And so that might be sounds, that might be a smell, that might be a body sensation. And that is why when people are traumatized, they seem to have an overreaction. But really, this thing that's pretty benign right here is not a big deal, but they're reacting to this huge thing that's back here.
Yes.
And so people will say all the time, like, what is wrong with you? You are overreacting. That was not a big deal. But to this back here, this is a traumatic experience and it's not safe. And
Yes.
so, in order to protect themselves, they have a heightened response.
And that's where the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn happens. And the heightened response is because the benign or even small trigger today is linked to the big trigger of the past that's not resolved yet. And a lot of people maybe haven't heard about fawn. Could you
Yeah,
explain that
that's a new
part?
one.
That's kind of a new one. I think it's a very important part of it. But could you explain that for a minute?
Yes. So I didn't learn about fawn until probably 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm,
We
mm-hmm.
all know about fight, flight, and freeze. Um, and I want to explain the biology behind that too after I explain
That'd be
this.
great.
Um, Fawn is where people go into this over pleasing mode. When there has been long term abuse, people will, It's almost kind of, you could define it as Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
There is this want to please whoever the threat is
Yes.
for safety. And so
Exactly.
there's overcompensation, there's people pleasing. I'm trying to think if there's a better way to describe it than that, but it's all about preserving safety. And so drawing into this person in hopes that they won't hurt them.
It's
That,
kind of like a nervous people pleasing, right?
yeah,
It's like
that's a
this
great way to say
nervous
that.
kind of people pleasing. Oh, could I get you this? Or can I do that? Or, oh, I cleaned up the kitchen really good. Or, that kind of thing. It's a nervous
Yes,
people pleasing.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, and so, to as therapists, we are especially trauma therapists. And let me tell you the difference between a trauma therapist and not a trauma therapist.
Sure.
All therapists see trauma. Not all therapists are trained to treat trauma.
No.
And not having a trauma trained therapist can do a lot of damage, because there tends to be kind of more blame and responsibility put on the part of the person that has been perpetrated against. And so that just continues this shame cycle that really is not there in the first place. And so I think it's really important, when you are getting a therapist, to ask those questions and find out if they're really able to deal with that kind
Agreed.
of problem.
So tell us about the biology behind the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
So, as therapists, we are always looking to help our clients stay within the window of tolerance. And so, the window of tolerance is when that frontal lobe is online, it's moving. There could be stuff happening, but your ability to emotionally stay regulated is there. And so, when there has been trauma, that window of tolerance gets smaller and smaller. And so, in hyper arousal, that's the fight um, response. And so, physiologically, if you think about, when you are going to fight someone, you start getting nervous energy in your legs, like your body starts pulling blood to your larger muscles, because that is what you're going to need to be able to fight or get out of the situation. And so it's your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, all of these things that your body needs to take care of yourself, that physiologically is happening. And so the thing that can happen is people can chase that response. And so, because afterwards there's an endorphin release.
Sure.
And so biologically, it can be, a pattern that people get addicted to. And so then there's the hypoarousal, which is the freeze. And I like to explain that by like a possum, that you're like playing dead, that you're getting as quiet as you can, as still as you can, trying to just be invisible. I have a client that we have dealt a lot with. That is their trauma response, is to freeze. And that hypoarousal, I mean, it even physiologically, your breathing slows down, your heart rate slows down. Like, it's really and truly your body protecting itself. And all of that is just so fascinating to me.
Very distinct from the first one, right?
Right.
Because the first one, I mean, if you get addicted to it, these would probably be some of our people that lose their temper a lot, or they're getting all riled up a lot, and they may even be the bully or something like that, but
Yeah,
they're addicted to it. And so they get that rush every time that happens. But this second one, when you freeze and you just shut down, that's like going into stealth mode, flying beneath the radar. And we do have a
absolutely.
lot of trauma clients that learn to do that.
Yeah. Um, So, how do we treat that? So,
Yep.
I am trained in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And I'm also trained in ART, which is accelerated resolution therapy. I've been trained in EMDR since 2018, and just recently got trained and certified in ART in October of
Oh,
last year.
good for you.
And I just cannot speak highly enough of those two modalities and working with trauma. One of the things that I say about me as a therapist is I want to do more than talk. I want
Yes.
us to like move through it and you learn how to thrive. Like, let's not survive this. Let's not rehash it. Let's figure out how do we heal and thrive and move through.
Mm-hmm.
And those two modalities are really great ways to do that. And so they, again, they work bilaterally with the
Mm-hmm.
right and the left
Mm-hmm.
side of your brain.
Mm-hmm. The
And
pictures and the words. Yeah.
yes. And so when there is trauma, words, that's why a lot of times when you ask someone what happened, they can't tell you. They
Right.
can see it, but they
Right.
can't verbalize it. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can do it through eye movements that go back and forth like this. Or if you're lazy like me, I have buzzers that people hold in their hands. Um, and, sometimes I had a lady that it was making her hands too tingly. So we put them under her legs, and that's how we did it.
Okay.
But it joins that right and left side of your brain together to create um, cohesiveness and unravel all of that stuff. And it is, neither of the women that created those two modalities are believers. And
Right.
that is just wild to me. It's so crazy to me. I
Yeah.
was working with someone yesterday, and we got done, and she was like, "That's the most woo woo thing I have ever done."
Right.
And I was like, "I'm here for it because it works."
Right.
And she was like, "I have never," she said, "I didn't think I was ever going to get through that stuff. This has been a
Wow.
lifelong thing that has followed me." And so um, with EMDR, it can be a little bit longer of a process just
Sure.
because of all the grounding that you have to do. Because we don't want to just approach trauma and like rip you wide open and then be
No.
like 50 minutes are up, catch you
Right.
later.
No.
Um, so therapists want to be really careful about
Mm-hmm.
how we light people's limbic system up in a
Mm-hmm.
way that's safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so with ART, it's a little different than that. I have clients that are not long term clients. They come in and we do one ART session and then I don't see them for months. And
Wow.
then they come back and are like, hey, I have another thing that I want to work on. So we get them
Mm-hmm.
on the schedule.
Mm-hmm. One of the ways that I work with some of these severe traumas, and I've been doing this for a while, is I work with my chaplain and we'll do a 5 hour intensive with people. And so you can really do the trauma work and make sure that you can get in and you can get out and things are taken care of and settled. Because you're right, you need a little extra time. Now, tell us a little bit about ART and some of the principles that you've really found to be helpful.
So the thing I love about ART is that it's the most gentle way that I have found to process trauma. And I still love EMDR. I did EMDR with someone last week and he was like, hey, I like this way better than I like ART. And I was like, great,
Sure.
we'll do that. Um, but because it is all about moving body sensations, clients don't have to share their trauma. And so, a lot of people to retell their trauma is re traumatizing them. My sister in law passed away in November of last year, and I have done a ton of therapeutic work with all of that. But that's something that I discussed with my EMDR therapist. Is I was like, I feel like every time I have to tell someone this story, it's like it's all happening all over again. And so I have done some EMDR stuff with her and I've done some ART stuff. I find that ART is more effective because you can knock out a whole series of things in one session because it's all kind of created there together. Whereas EMDR, we're taking targets one at a time.
Sure. Sure.
So I like them both. I use them both. I keep my buzzers out all the time so
Okay.
that I can be like, hey, just grab the buzzers and let's, if something positive is going on. One of my eating disorder clients, when they would call me or text me after they had just eaten a whole meal, we would jump on Zoom real fast and do and install that positive sensation of, feeling accomplished that they had eaten and the way that it felt in their body. And so it just, bilateral stimulation is so helpful. It's just like therapy on steroids. And so I use it, even if I'm not doing a whole protocol for EMDR or ART, I use those principles, all the time in my everyday practice.
That's so good. That is so good. And Caroline, you were talking about how, there's been so much science, brain science especially, but physiological science coming out, especially like you said, since the groundbreaking Body Keeps the Score. Where do you see things going? Can you see, things that are breaking through just in recent years? Like you were talking about, you really got the ART started last year, but where do you see things going on the science side and the physiology and the biology side?
That's such a great question. Where do I see it going? I One of the things that I am liking seeing is that psychiatrists are more willing to collaborate with therapists. We typically see our clients more than med management psychiatrists. And
Mm-hmm.
so for them to hear, to shoot them a quick text, I am a big collaborator. And so to shoot, an email or a text before I know, or when I know they're about to have a session, I think that that's really helpful in figuring out what meds are working and what meds are not working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a big one that I've seen. I think that just the collaboration between the medical community overall and therapists, I think is going to be huge because so much of like GI and gut stuff, we call the stomach the second brain
Right.
because there's so many neuroreceptors that go between all of that.
Right.
And so understanding that part of things, that's something that I've seen a big change in with the medical community is kind of figuring that part of things out and getting people into therapy faster. I had a client that was sexually assaulted,
Sure.
developed a lot of gut issues. And after we did some EMDR and cleared that out, I mean, it's 95% gone.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just wild how pain shows up, how emotional pain shows up in our bodies. And a
Yes.
lot of times it is GI distress.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that that's one hope that I have is that internists and GI docs will be more open to kind of the woo woo side of things. I did not used to be woo woo at all. And now, now I'm very woo woo.
Very
Uh,
woo woo. Right. Well, and you look at and I mean, part of the woo woo is just how wild God designed us with the different parts of our brain. And of course, we understand we're working to help dysregulation get to regulation. And so, I mean, it's just wild when you see how fearfully and wonderfully made we are.
yes,
I mean, that's just
absolutely.
wild. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I have been thinking about is, Paul talks about the renewing of our minds and
Mhm, mhm.
transformation
Right.
and what that looks like. And I think that, for believers, you can come right out and say that of like, hey, you need to be informing yourself with scripture. Like, don't listen to your heart. Your heart will lie to you every single time. Don't listen to your brain because your brain will lie to you every single time. Like, the word of God does not return void. And
Right.
so, having that be the truth of what is informing us, I think is really important. But with clients that are not believers, I mean, the same thing is true of garbage in, garbage out.
Right. Right.
And so that's one thing that I've been thinking about a ton is um, just the biblical principles, they work whether you're working within a faith context or not.
They do, yes.
And so, I don't want to get political, but after all of this Charlie Kirk business,
Right, right.
um, it has just so emboldened me to share my faith.
That's good,
I have
Caroline.
never marketed myself as a Christian counselor. I have always said I am a Christian and I am a counselor.
Right.
Um, because I didn't want to alienate people. But since all of that has happened, like it just really emboldened my faith that on my website there's a faith-based modality on there. And I think that, at this point in time, people are so tired of being sick and tired that they are willing to try more things.
I
And
think you're
so
right.
integrating faith into that, whatever that looks like for people, I think can be really, really helpful in helping people heal.
Hey, I will tell you, I think that's an awesome step that you've taken. I know that I took it a while ago, and it's like I've never looked back. It's like that's
Yeah.
what I do, you know? Caroline, thank you so much for being on with us today. Any final words before we wrap up?
Um, the Lord wants you to be whole. He
Yes.
wants you to thrive in life, and Satan does not. He wants to keep you stuck in the mud of all of the things that have happened. And the truth is, God has so much bigger for you. And through my own journey, I have come back to see the goodness of the Lord and the faithfulness of the Lord. And my therapist said something to me that I have thought so much about is that God is faithful even when we don't acknowledge that.
So good.
And, you know, through Christ, we can be wholly seen and wholly loved. And there's unconditional love there. And I think that that's the key to healing trauma and attachment wounds. And all of that is really the unconditional, unwavering love of Jesus that has for each one of us.
That's so good, Caroline. I couldn't agree more. And I think maybe because you brought that up, we'll end with this verse. John 10:10, which one minister I really respect said is the dividing verse in the Bible. Jesus says, "The thief only comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that you might have life and life more abundant." So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being on with us today. A licensed professional counselor, supervisor, a trauma specialist. How can we reach you? How can any of our listeners reach you, Caroline?
So my website is cwkcounseling.com, and I am on Instagram and TikTok at Bruised Banana Counseling.
That's easy to
That's my
remember. Bruised
yeah.
banana.
My SEO guy is like, that's not on brand. And I'm like, but it's funny.
It's going to work for me. I
Yeah,
like
it's
it. I
gonna
like
work. Yeah.
it. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much
much for
for being
having
on.
me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Anytime. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do us a favor and like, subscribe, and share with others who might need it. And you can find additional resources at SamaritansWell.com.